Solomon revealed the formula for infinite wealth, but the church has hidden it. There is a question that spans generations. A silent, uncomfortable question that almost no one asks aloud, but that echoes in the minds of millions of people every day. What truly separates those who achieve wealth, freedom, and the power of choice from those who spend their entire lives merely surviving? It's not a question about greed. It's not about luxury. It's about destiny. Observe the world carefully. Two people are born in similar neighborhoods. They attend similar schools. They have access to the same information. They live in the same era. And yet, one builds prosperity, influence, impact. The other spends its life putting out fires, paying bills, postponing dreams.
Why?
For years, we've been trained to accept superficial answers. It's luck. It's privilege. It's talent. It's the system. But Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, never pointed to these causes as determining factors. On the contrary, he stated something deeply unsettling for those who prefer to remain in scarcity. The difference doesn't begin outside. It begins inside. And that's the first truth that few are prepared to hear. Brain the fundamental mistake that almost everyone makes. Most people believe that life happens to them. Solomon taught that life happens from them. This changes everything. While some people live by reacting to circumstances, others learn to create circumstances. While many ask, "Why me?" others ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" And this invisible difference shapes entire destinies. But here's the point that's almost never clearly explained. Backhand index pointing right, the mind is the true battlefield of wealth. And we're not just talking about cheap wishful thinking. We're talking about mental structure, language, beliefs, and worldview. Solomon recorded his principles in simple proverbs, almost naive at first glance. But behind them lies a powerful code. A code that is of no interest to institutions that profit from ignorance, guilt, and dependency. Scroll Y, was this knowledge diluted? Imagine the following scenario. A population that understands that thoughts create reality. Words activate pathways. Choices shape destiny. This population is not easily controlled. Now, imagine a population that believes that wealth is a sin. Prosperity is selfishness. Suffering is a virtue. This population obeys. They accept little. They don't question. Solomon never said that money was evil. He said that a lack of wisdom is destructive. But over the centuries, the message has been softened, fragmented, and reinterpreted. The result? Millions of spiritual people, living in mental, emotional, and financial misery, praying for blessings while reinforcing thoughts of scarcity, asking for prosperity while talking about defeat every day. Solomon would call that inconsistency. Old key, the first key. The right question. Every transformation begins with the right question. And Solomon understood this like no one else. He wrote that, "As a man thinks in his heart, so is he." It's not what you want. It's not what you pretend to believe. It's what silently dwells in your mind. And here comes the life-defying question. Are you living intentionally or automatically? Because living on autopilot means accepting inherited beliefs. Money is hard to come by. That's not for me. People like me don't make it. These phrases seem harmless, but they are programmed. And all programming produces a predictable result. Fire the internal conflict that defines destinies. There is a conflict that everyone faces, whether they are aware of it or not. On one side, security, routine, predictability. From the other side, growth, risk, expansion. Most people choose the first path, not out of weakness but out of conditioning. Solomon warned, "He who observes the wind never sows." In other words, those who wait for the perfect moment, those who wait for absolute guarantees, never build anything great. And here is the central provocation of this chapter. Mediocrity is not a lack of ability. It's an excess of fear. Fear of making mistakes. Fear of seeming arrogant. Fear of wanting more. The system doesn't fear poor people. It fears conscious people. Seedling where wealth really begins. Solomon never started by talking about gold. He started by talking about wisdom, because money is a consequence, not a cause. The correct sequence is thought, word, action, habit, destiny. If thought is limited, word will be weak, action will be inconsistent, habit will be self-sabotaging, and the outcome, predictable. But when the mind changes, everything changes along with it. This video isn't about getting rich quick. It's about awakening, waking up to realize that no one will save you, no one will build it for you, and no one can stop the growth of those who understand the game. And now comes the part that almost no one teaches, neither in schools nor in churches. Solomon stated that wealth begins in the mouth, not at the bank, not at work, not at the market, in the mouth, in what you repeat, in what you declare, in what you normalize. In the next chapter, you will understand why your words are building or destroying your financial reality, even when you think you're doing everything right. Before continuing this journey, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and comment. Where are you watching from, and what phrase about money have you heard most often in your life? Once the mind awakens, one thing becomes impossible: to see the world in the same way again. In the previous chapter, you realized that wealth doesn't begin with money. It begins in the mind, in the way you think, interpret, and react to life. Now comes the second revelation, even more unsettling. Wealthy people live in a different world, even when they're in the same place. They breathe the same air. They walk the same streets. They face crises, setbacks, and rejections. But the inner experience of life is completely different. And Solomon understood this deeply. Compass, what really changes when abundance arrives. Most people believe that money changes who you are. But Solomon taught the opposite. Money only reveals who you've become. Abundance doesn't create character. It amplifies it. When someone lives in constant scarcity, the mind enters survival mode. Short decisions. Focus on the immediate. Constant fear of losing. Those who experience prosperity live at a different pace. Think about the long term. Choose carefully. Act strategically. The big difference isn't how much money is in the account. It's the mental state behind each choice. And this mental state can be developed or blocked. Chains, the invisible prison of scarcity. Here's a truth that few like to admit. Backhand index pointing right, most people don't live in material poverty. They live in mental poverty. They reject opportunities before even trying. They distrust their own abilities. They confuse prudence with fear. Solomon wrote, "The poor man makes pleas, but the rich man answers firmly." It's not arrogance. It's internal positioning. Those who see themselves as small communicate small. Those who see themselves as capable speak with authority. And the world reacts to how you position yourself. Performing arts stories that repeat themselves throughout the centuries. Have you ever noticed how almost every success story begins with rejection? The artist no one believed in. The entrepreneur who was discredited. The creator who was called crazy. They didn't start with resources. They started with vision. Some created companies. Others created works of art. Others created ideas that changed entire cultures. The path was different. The principle was the same. They decided not to negotiate their own internal vision. Light bulb, different paths, the same foundation. Solomon never taught a single practical method. He spoke of principles because principles adapt to any era. Today, there are many paths. Invest. To undertake. Create content. Develop skills. Build brands. But they all collapse without the right foundation. Lack of mental clarity. Investments become gambles. Business ventures turn to despair. Creativity turns to frustration. That's why so many people try to copy strategies and fail. They mimic the action, but ignore the mental state behind it. Counterclockwise arrows button, the subtle change that transforms everything. Here is the transition that separates the two worlds. People trapped by scarcity ask, "How much will this cost me?" People focused on prosperity ask, "What can this generate?" One sees it as an expense. The other sees it as an investment. One sees risk. The other sees learning. Solomon wrote, By wisdom, a house is built, and by understanding, it is established. It's not impulse. It's intention. Crossed swords, the viewer's internal conflict. At this point in the video, something starts to get annoying, because you realize that perhaps there is no lack of ability. Perhaps there will be no shortage of opportunities. Perhaps there is a lack of internal positioning. And that realization hurts. Because taking on this responsibility means taking responsibility. It's much more comfortable to blame the world. But Solomon wasn't speaking to appease. He was speaking to awaken. Brain when beliefs begin to crack. Perhaps you've heard your whole life. Money doesn't buy happiness. Those who crave too much money are empty-headed. Spirituality and wealth don't go together. But note the contradiction. No resources. Dreams get trapped. Time is sold. Choices are limited. Solomon never separated spirituality from prosperity. He taught order. First wisdom, then prosperity, then legacy. This chapter isn't about money. It's about life experience. It's about living expanded or living contracted. It's about creating or just reacting. The question that remains is simple and brutal. Do you want to continue merely existing, or do you want to experience all that life has to offer in its fullness? If this chapter is helping you see beyond the obvious, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, thumbs up, and comment. What belief about money do you feel has limited you the most so far? There is a silent moment, almost imperceptible, when life begins to change. It's not when the money arrives. It's not when recognition appears. It's not when the outside world validates something. True change begins the moment you realize you are choosing or being chosen. Solomon understood this point like few men in history. That's why he never spoke of destiny as something fixed. He spoke of a path, and a path is always a succession of choices. Balance scale, the big mistake about destiny. For centuries, millions of people have been taught to believe that they were born to suffer. They have to be content with little. If it is God's will, something will change. But Solomon wrote something radically different. The heart of man plans his way. This means that destiny is not imposed. It is constructed. Not all at once, but decision after decision. The problem is that most people outsource this power. They allow. Fear decides. Other people's opinions decide. The pain of the past decides. And then they call the result life. Brain the mind as a tool or a trap. Solomon described the mind as a field. Whatever is planted there grows. Thoughts are not neutral. They are seeds. If you plant doubt, scarcity, self-deprecation, you reap hesitation, giving up, and regret. But what is planted? Vision, constancy, courage, harvest expansion. The secret isn't in avoiding negative thoughts. That's impossible. The secret is in not feeding them. Glow showing Europe-Africa examples that confirm the principle. Napoleon Hill studied hundreds of millionaires and came to a disconcerting conclusion. None of them attributed their success to luck. Walt Disney went bankrupt multiple times. Steve Jobs was publicly humiliated. Picasso was called insane. They weren't special at first. They became special because they persisted in their vision when no one else saw anything. Solomon would call this applied wisdom. Fire the choice that defines who you become. Throughout life, there are two constant invitations. Comfort now. Growth after. The problem is that comfort comes at a high price. Every time you choose not to try, not to speak, not to act, you reinforce a limited identity. Solomon warned, those who love comfort will end up in scarcity. Not because comfort is bad, but because it numbs potential. Compass strategy or intuition. Many believe that success is simply a matter of calculation. Others believe that simply trusting instinct is enough. Solomon advocated for balance. Diligent planning leads to abundance. In other words, vision without action is illusion. Action without vision is exhaustion. A thriving mind learns to listen to your intuition, structuring strategies, adjust routes. She doesn't confuse fear with prudence. No entry, the invisible price of self-sabotage. Have you ever noticed how many times you back down, not because you failed, but because you almost succeeded? This is one of the most self-sabotaging phenomena of the human mind. The fear of failure is great, but the fear of one's own potential is greater. Solomon wrote, "Man's fear sets traps." It's not fear of the world. It's fear of growing beyond what the environment allows. Counterclockwise arrows button identity needs to change before reality. Here is a profound truth. Backhand index pointing right, you don't rise to the level of your dream. You fall to the level of your identity. If you see yourself as someone who tries, you won't sustain results. If you see yourself as someone who builds, you weather the storms. Solomon taught that before changing circumstances, you must change who you believe yourself to be. New moon sacrifice, the word no one wants to hear. Every great transformation requires change. Exchange of habits, companies, internal speeches. Nothing grows without space. And Solomon was direct. There is a time to lose and a time to win. Those who try to keep everything end up achieving nothing. Now we've reached a crucial point. Solomon stated that not every loss is a failure. Some are initiations. But this requires something rare: the courage to endure discomfort without turning back. In the next chapter, you will understand why failure is an unavoidable step and how to use it as leverage, not as a sentence. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and share this video with someone who is stuck between fear and their own potential. There comes a point in the journey where everything seems to fall apart. It's not the beginning, when enthusiasm still protects the mind. It's not the end, when the result already gives meaning to the pain. It's the middle, the territory where dreams begin to demand proof, where motivation no longer sustains anyone, where only internal structure keeps someone moving. Solomon knew this place, and it was precisely there that he placed his most profound warnings. The abyss doesn't warn when it's coming. The abyss doesn't appear with warning signs. It emerges disguised as weariness, doubt, and minor frustrations. A project that doesn't respond, an investment that goes wrong, an attempt that yields no results. And, silently, the mind begins to whisper, "Maybe this isn't for you. You've tried enough. Go back to what's safe." This is the most dangerous moment of the journey, not because you've failed, but because you're close to growing. Solomon wrote, "The righteous man falls 7 times and rises again." It's not the fall itself that defines it. It's the internal response to it. Warning: the big misunderstanding about failure. We were taught to fear failure, to see it as a sign of inadequacy, as a source of shame. But Solomon never treated failure as a sentence. He treated it as a process. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of the journey towards it. The real danger isn't making mistakes. It's giving up on growth to preserve the ego. Broken heart when loss hurts more than doubt. Financial loss hurts. Social rejection hurts. Feeling alone hurts. But there is an even deeper pain. The pain of realizing that you retreated, not because you needed to, but because you were afraid. Solomon warned, the end of a thing is better than its beginning. Because the middle tests everything that was decided at the beginning. Brain: the internal moral conflict. Every human being faces a silent question in the abyss. Is it better to risk it and lose, or never risk it and never know? This question divides destinies. Those who choose absolute security live trapped by small gains. Those who consciously accept risk expand their inner limits. Solomon did not glorify impulsive risk-taking. He valued risk-taking aligned with wisdom. Fire: the fusion of the 4 pillars of wealth. It is in the abyss that the pillars unite. Brain: reason, analysis, strategy, adaptation. Red heart: emotion, meaning, purpose, passion. Artist palette: creativity, solutions, vision, differentiation. Hourglass: not done, discipline, consistency when enthusiasm dies. Separately, they are weak. United, they are unstoppable. Solomon called this building upon the rock. Chains: the temptation to return to the comfort zone. Comfort calls. It promises immediate relief, but it takes its toll in the long run. Going back is easy. Crossing is rare. And Solomon was clear. The lazy person desires and has nothing. Not for lack of desire, but for backing down when the process demands continuity. Waxing crescent moon, when the transformation really begins. There comes a point when you stop asking for signs, and you become the sign. When you stop waiting for support, and create your own support, the mind changes. Decisions become firmer. Identity is reorganized. Not because everything became easy, but because you became stronger. Building construction, the birth of internal authority. After the abyss, something is born. Authority. No arrogance. No harshness. Internal authority. You learn that not all criticism matters. Not every delay is a defeat. Not all loneliness is loss. Solomon called this maturity. And here we arrive at the most overlooked point in Solomon's teachings. True wealth is not what you accumulate. It's what remains after the storm has passed. In the next and final chapter, you will understand why money is just a tool, how to transform prosperity into a legacy, and why true wealth begins in the mind, but ends in impact. Before moving on to Chapter 5, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications bell, and leave a like, thumbs up if you feel this journey is strengthening you from within. The end of this story is, in fact, a new beginning. Every true journey ends in silence. Not the silence of giving up, but the silence of understanding. After traversing the question, the shift in perception, the awakening of the mind, and the abyss of transformation, only one thing remains: clarity. And Solomon always wrote for this moment. Compass, what most people confuse with wealth. For centuries, they have been taught that wealth is accumulating wealth, flaunting achievements, prove worth. But Solomon never limited his wisdom to money. He saw it as a result, not as an end in itself. Money comes in, money goes out, but who you become remains. True wealth is freedom of choice, internal coherence, peace with one's own path. Without it, no fortune can sustain the soul. Brain the final formula, simple but non-negotiable. Solomon never presented complex formulas. He presented order, right mindset, aligned words, conscious action, consistent habit, inevitable legacy. This sequence never fails. What changes is how long someone insists on it. The church, the system, the culture, they prefer to talk about future rewards because that postpones present responsibility. Solomon was speaking of the present moment. Speaker high volume, the mouth finishes what the mind begins. During this journey, you've heard that wealth begins in the mind. Now you understand something deeper. Backhand index pointing right, it solidifies in the mouth. What you say about yourself shapes decisions, directs behavior, builds identity. Those who speak like victims live like victims. Those who speak with conscience act with authority. Words are not sounds. They are commands. Solomon knew this. Building construction, from success to legacy. There comes a point where success ceases to be personal, when you realize that its growth inspires, your choices influence, your story serves. This is the birth of a legacy. Legacy isn't about leaving money. It's about leaving an example, structure, and vision. And here lies true abundance. Glow showing Europe, Africa, the impact that wealth can generate. Wealth, when properly understood, frees up time, expands reach, maximizes impact. It allows you to create, support, and build. The problem was never the money. It was the mind being unprepared to handle it. Solomon warned, he who loves money is never satisfied, because it confuses means with ends. Fire the final invitation to responsibility. There is no more ignorance. There is choice. You can forget all that, or apply consistently. No one builds a legacy on impulse. It's built through daily alignment. Thoughts, words, attitudes. Every day, seedling wealth begins within you. You may not see external results yet, but if something has changed inside, the process has already begun. Solomon believed that better is a little with wisdom than much with confusion. An aligned mind creates the path. Money simply follows it afterwards. Dove, closing the circle. This story was never about Solomon. It was about you. Regarding realizing that no one will save you. No one will choose for you. No one can stop someone who has decided to grow. The formula was never hidden. It was simply ignored by those who feared responsibility. If this series sparked something in you, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications bell, and share this video with someone who needs to start their own journey. Remember, true wealth begins in the mind, manifests itself in choices, and is immortalized in legacy. And from today onwards, the responsibility is yours.